All right. Looks like we're live now. Looks like the camera's working, microphone's working. I think we're all good. So let me jump into it here. Let me adjust camera. It feels a little tight. Let's back it up just a little bit. Okay. Let me get the disclaimers out of the way, and we'll jump into it if we got some chat to respond to. We only got about 6 people in here, 7, so we'll probably have some chat here in just a second. So this is a weekly live broadcast pretty much every Thursday evening, 7 o'clock Central. This is where I am. You can come in here. You can ask questions. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. It doesn't matter to me. We can talk about controversial topics like politics and religion if you want to. I don't care. I let the chat drive the way that the conversation's going to go. I do my best to respond to every chat that comes in during the live broadcast itself. The only things I ask from you is keep it family friendly, be polite, don't start cussing anybody, call anybody names, don't be hateful with anybody. Just because they have a different opinion than you doesn't mean we have to hate each other. We can still be friends. So keep that in mind, and we'll be good. And I think that's about it. So let's jump into it. We got Joy Guthrie here from Western Oregon. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Now, I know we got at least 9 other people in here, but I don't have any other chat yet to respond to. So there we go. Don's here from South Central Illinois. Good to see you, Don. Thank you for joining tonight. I appreciate that. Katrina, hello to you. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. So we're going to have a few hellos and things to go on first of all, probably, before we get into the meat of things. I don't know how everybody's weather's been. We're still getting crazy amounts of rain. It's been raining about every other day, but we got a stretch here. It looks like we're not expecting rain. It didn't rain today. It's not supposed to rain tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. We got a slight chance on Tuesday, so that's good. I actually picked probably a decent year to take a year off of gardening because right now everything would be drowning. It would be too much water. All right, good to drink here. We got a couple more people here. McVeigh Family Homestead says, hey, watching from Central Indiana. Well, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Cindy from hot and humid Minnesota. Good to see you too. And Bill Cox says, good evening to everybody. Well, good evening to you as well. All right. David Lister says, how do you spell H-O-T? I don't know exactly what you're getting at there. But good to see you anyway. Thank you. Joy says, it's so nice here today. It was actually not a bad day here today. We got pretty warm. I think it was high 80s. So heat index probably low 90s, 90-ish degrees out. Not bad. Not much wind, not much of a breeze. So a little bit on the warm side, but I'll take it. I needed some sunshine. I'm sick of the rain. Don says, I got no rain and the ground is now very dry. I have to water tomorrow. It's going to be 99 and above the next week. Yuck. Yeah, we're supposed to be getting pretty warm this weekend. I think Saturday the heat index is going to be over 100. Triple digits, 102, 103, something like that. I don't know. So, yeah, we're starting to get warm now. But, we're past due, honestly. I mean, this is middle of June, almost the end of June. And we still haven't had a day above 90 degrees yet. So I can't complain. We're well past due for that kind of weather. Life Done Cheap with Lee says, hello, Chris, and everyone else. Hello to you, too. Katrina, curious, what do people do for their quail during extreme heat warnings? Last week was 60s and flooding, expecting 115 on Saturday. There's not a whole lot that I do. The big thing, the quail in the heat, try to keep them out of direct sun. Make sure that they have shade over them. If you can put them under a tree, in a shady spot, so where it's not just the shade of the roof of their hutch, but the whole hutch is in the shade. That's going to help considerably. Make sure they have plenty of ventilation. Wire cages help with that, of course, and make sure they have access to fresh water at all times. Don't let them run out of water. And that's about it. They tend to handle those kinds of things pretty well. Sometimes you do see a little bit of an egg drop, for like a day or two, whenever there's an extreme change in weather, whether it be a drop in temperature or a big rise in temperature. It can cause your egg production to slow down for just a day or two. It's usually not very much more than that. But there's not a whole lot else that you really need to do. They do tend to handle those things pretty well. Andy says, hey, everybody from Southwest Michigan. How are things in Missouri, Chris? Not too bad, actually. Going all right. It's like we're going to have a weekend with no rain. I'm going to have to mow the yard on Saturday. We're at that point right now with all the rain we've been getting. You pretty much have to mow it every time it dries out. I mean, whenever it stops raining, you got to mow the yard. So I mowed it. Let's see, we're a little over a week. I think I mowed it last Wednesday, or maybe it was Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. I mowed it. Anyhow, so we're going on a week and a half, and it really needs it now. So it wasn't bad over the weekend. It looked fine. But I got to do some mowing this weekend. I'm going to have to get that done early because it's hot out. But other than that, things are going pretty good. And then mowing's not that big a deal. Don says, I have 28 baby quail and called the hatch this morning. Tomorrow I'll be setting more eggs. Well, congratulations on your hatch. Hopefully that was a good one. 28 sounds like a decent hatch. And good luck on your next one coming up. Desert Homestead says, hey, Chris, I'm having a problem with my chicken eating their eggs. 25 birds, and I got 3 eggs. Do quail ever have this problem? I can't say that I've ever had that problem. I do every great once in a while find an egg that's been, broken or smashed or something like that, but it's not that common, and it's not that, I don't think it's them eating the eggs. They may be trampling on them, or maybe have an egg that was born with no shell, or laid with no shell. I shouldn't say born, laid with no shell, so it broke real easy, that kind of thing. But I've never noticed a big issue with them eating their eggs. I don't know with chickens eating their eggs. I'm not a chicken expert necessarily. I have read some things about that it could be possibly. There could be a number of reasons for it. It could be a lack of protein or a lack of calcium. So if you don't already, you may have to provide them with some extra, like crushed oyster shell or something like that. Just put it in a container off to the side for them. They'll eat their fill. You don't need to mix it in with anything. That may help a little bit with it. I don't know. You may know, somebody else may know a couple of other tricks to kind of help with that too. But I don't know the exact way to fix that problem. And that's probably not what you're asking, but I don't think I've ever had that issue. We'll see if anybody else talks about issues with their quail eating the eggs. Deb says, I've been moving shade cloth around over crops and chaining out frozen water bottles with my quail. What? Oh, wait a minute. Changing out frozen water bottles with my quail. Love to sit on during the heat and a fan. Okay, that makes sense. Now, I read that totally wrong. I was like, why are you having to change out frozen water bottles? It's the middle of summer. You shouldn't have anything freezing. But I freezing water bottles intentionally, putting them out there for your birds because they want to sit on them. And, that's not a terrible idea. You can definitely do all those things if you want to do. My thought on that is I would rather be acclimated to it because we're going to have a lot of hot weather coming up. And, if I'm gone for a weekend or something, I got a gnat in here. It's driving me crazy. Flying right around in my face. You probably can't see him on camera. So if you see me waving around, I'm not just a nutty person. I'm like trying to get that gnat. So maybe I'm a little nutty, but that's not why I'm doing that. Anyhow, I'd rather let my birds just get acclimated to that heat, deal with it, because I don't want it to be a situation where, I'm gone and I can't get frozen water bottles out there and all of a sudden they're thrust into the heat again, So, but, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to do that, that absolutely works. You can. McVeigh Homestead says, it's going to be mid-90s here. I'm prepping ice packs and frozen water bottles for the rabbits. I kind of do the same thing with the rabbits. I keep them in the shade. I try not to pester them too much during the heat of the day. And other than that, almost got him. I pretty much just let them deal with it because I don't want it to be I did use water bottles for a while. I tried freezing water bottles, but I have to put them in the morning before I go to work. And honestly, by the time it gets to the heat of the day, they're probably melted anyway. And secondly, I never saw my rabbits use them. They never laid up against them or anything. They just kind of ignored them being in there. So I gave up on that. Joyce says, I turned fans on. That's not a terrible idea either. David says it's 92 here, 102 heat index. Yeah, we're going to be there this weekend. Don said, I give my quail plant saucers for waiting in, add ice cubes sometimes, feed frozen sliced tomatoes, frozen cucumbers, and watermelon. Mine love frozen veggies in the bad heat. Well, you guys are way nicer to your animals than I am, I guess. I don't do any of that stuff, but I mean, yeah, you can. Those are things you could definitely do. Dawn says, I keep fans on their cages oscillating just to blow air into their cage some. It's not a bad idea either. I don't have really power out there, and I don't trust really, like, the only house caught on fire. And so I've had a little bit of a paranoia about fans. We had running, all night long, and the motor caught on fire. So I'm a little paranoid about those things. Not that there's any issues, but I don't have power out there anyway, so I'd have to run an extension cord to put a fan out there. I just don't mess with it. They seem to do, the quail especially, I mean, they'll pant a little bit, but they seem to do okay. It doesn't seem to bother them too much. The rabbits, they got big fur coats on. They struggle a little bit in the heat, but even them, they seem to acclimate to it. It's not as big of a deal. I don't breed. I may breed the Tamucks again. I don't know, but I don't breed the other rabbits. Tamucks are supposed to be a heat tolerant rabbit. They were bred to be heat tolerant, so I may try that with them. But the other ones I don't breed in the summer because of the heat. I give them that time off. But as long as they have access to water, they seem to do just fine. And just leave them alone. Don't pester them too much. Don't get them all worked up. I just let them rest during the heat of the day. Try to do my chores in the mornings and the evenings. Let's see. Katrina says, what do you do when you have way too many eggs? Well, if you can't eat them all, do you have a dog? Great for dogs. Now, I break mine up whenever my dog gets a handful of eggs a day. We raw feed him, so that's part of his diet. He just gets a handful of eggs, probably about 4, maybe 5 a day. But I do break them up because if I don't, he'll pick them up and take them into his little bed in the living room and try to eat them there and can make a little bit of a mess. So I break them up in his bowl, feed them to him. So that's a good way. You can't really overfeed the eggs to your dogs. And every once in a while, I do have to throw a couple out, or I just hard boil them and, eat them that way too. So that's about it. I mean, give them to your neighbors. It's a good way to make friends with your neighbors and make sure your neighbors don't complain about your quail. Life Done Cheap with Lee says, my doe that I thought was pregnant was in fact not. It was weird because her first litter was no issue, 30 days exactly, and had 11 kits. That does happen from time to time. I had a false pregnancy with my doe, not this litter. I mean, she just had a litter, but right before that, the one right before, had successful fall offs, but nothing. She never had them. So it's a weird thing, I know, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Grab a drink real quick. Jeffrey Devine said, I had 3 thermometers and all were showing different temperatures in my incubator. I sat 59 eggs, 15 hatched out of 44 left. 29 were embryos that started and didn't fully develop. Any thoughts? Now, it's a tough one because you had the 3 thermometers going and they all showed a different temperature. That's a little bit weird. What kind of incubator are you using? Is it a forced air? Does it have a fan kit in it? Or is it a still air incubator? And what temperature were you getting on all those thermometers? The one thing I would suggest is calibrate your thermometers. You just have to look up how to do it. It's not terribly difficult. Hopefully they can be calibrated. Calibrate your thermometers and then run them in there, run your incubator. You don't have to put any eggs in it. Just run it with those in there and see if they're all reading the same temperature now once they're calibrated. Because that sounds like what needs to be done. Chances are it's a temperature issue. You could be a couple of degrees low, and that's going to affect your hatch rate. Temperature is way more important than humidity. So if you had eggs start to develop but didn't fully develop, my guess would be a temperature issue of some kind. Also, make sure you don't have it sitting in front of like a window where the blinds are open and the sun's going to beat through the window during the middle of the day. That'll heat up your incubator. That can cause issues. Or over an air conditioner vent that's blowing cold air on it. That can cause issues with it too. Fairly stable environment really is what you're looking for. I had really bad hatch rates for a while, couldn't figure it out, and then realized the blinds, I'm looking, you can't see them, but they're right here. The blinds of that window were open, and during the day while I was at work, never even realized it. Sun was coming through that window, hitting the incubator and heating it up basically, and it was cooking the eggs inside. So, I mean, make sure you don't have that issue too. Katrina says, thanks for the advice during the heat. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. Probably didn't give the best because, I just tend to kind of let my animals deal with it. I keep them in the shade. There's never direct sunlight on their hutch. But other than that, fresh water, and that's it. I just try not to pester them too much. David Lister says, I'm getting close to the end of partridge hatching season, 24 live chicks. Most of the rest of the eggs were infertile, 15 still in the incubator. So, well, you got 24 out of them, so that's good. But hopefully you're happy with that. Sounds like a good hatch to me. Scrap 5000's here, says, what's up, y'all? Greetings from New York City, and smash the like button. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Alan Pulley's here, says, hey, Chris and all, sorry I'm late. I finished feeding up the birds, so no problem. We don't keep attendance here, so you don't have to worry about that. Desert Homestead says, my comment disappeared. Uh-oh. Did I miss it? There was one with your eggs. You're talking about something else besides the birds eating the eggs, right? Maybe something else. You can try reposting it and seeing if it will post. Hey, there's Verna. Good to see you, Verna. Thanks for joining. We've got a couple people saying hi to her. All right, that's the end of the chat so far. Nobody else has responded, or nobody else has put any chat in. So let's see. What can I talk about now? I don't know. I don't have any topics planned out. You guys know how that goes. Are we still live? Everything going on? Yeah, there we go. 340 Quail Farms here. Says, hey, Chris and everyone. Hello to you too, and thank you for joining. And there's Verna saying, Chris, how many kits do you have today? Well, right now I've got the 7 Tamucks, and then I've got 2 bucks left from my silver fox that I haven't sold. So they'll probably get processed this weekend. May wait until next weekend to do that. Tony from Toronto's here. Good to see you. Farmer Marshall says, hey, Chris, good to see you. Yeah, good to see you too. Thank you for joining. I know I can't actually see you, but you get what I'm saying. It's good to talk with you guys. I do enjoy the time that we get to hang out every Thursday. Wish we could do it more frequently. And the chat's slowing down again. How many people we got in here? We got 25 people in here. We should get some chat coming through. There's Bob Romano says, I have never had a broody quail, but I have one now. She's been sitting about 12 eggs for about a week in my outside hutch. Am I wasting her time, or should I give her a chance? If they don't hatch, should I leave them in the hutch with the other 13? Oh, if they do hatch, I think you're saying. If they do hatch, should I leave them in the hutch with the other 13 adults, 10 hens, and 3 roosters? Okay, so yeah, I would say that's, first of all, it's incredibly unusual for them to go broody and to sit on their eggs. They don't typically do a great job with hatching them out, but you never know. They might. Go ahead and give her a try. Let her see what happens. I mean, it's only 12 eggs, right? It's not the end of the world if they don't hatch, or if they do. If they do tend to hatch, you should be fine to just leave them in there with them. See if she takes care of them. Now, she may or may not. You may have to take them out, put them in a brooder for a couple of days, but, it's worth the experiment, I would say. You don't have to worry about the other birds necessarily hurting them. They shouldn't. When I move birds in with my existing birds, I always do it when they're like, as soon as they come out of 2 weeks old, and I get really good luck with that. If I wait till they're much bigger than that, then it's hard to acclimate them into it. They see them as more like adults and tend to kind of beat on them and pick on them and that kind of stuff. But when I move them in when they're young, 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, or younger, somewhere right around in there, they just acclimate right in. The birds never pick on them, never cause any problems. So you should be okay with that. But I don't know that she's going to actually sit on them, keep them warm after they hatch much. You may have to watch that. You may have to move them out, put them in a brooder or something. I'd be surprised if you get many to hatch out of that, but you never know. Try it out and see. Let's see. We got somebody talking to somebody else. Alan Pulley says the rain has finally slowed down here. However, it's warmed up to the mid-90s. Yeah, that's pretty much what's going on here too. We got no rain. It didn't rain today. We had storms come through. It wasn't last night. It was the night before last. Storms came through. Middle of the night, I slept right through it. But we did have some storms, and nothing today, and nothing in the forecast until Tuesday. And then there's a chance of rain. So we got several days with no rain. Like I said, I'm going to have to mow the yard because it's finally drying out enough to get mowed. David Lister says we have a 6-month-old New Zealand red with heavy hawk issues. What do you give them to relief from this issue? You're talking about like sore hocks, like on their feet, like open wounds, basically on their pads of their feet. What do I do? There's a couple of things you could do if you want to keep that rabbit. I call them because that's typically a genetic issue that they'll pass on to their young. and it's really hard to get under control. You might be able to get it cured. A lot of people use things like Preparation H to kind of tighten that skin up and with that, but it's probably going to come back. It's a really hard thing to treat, and it's one of those things that you might be able to get it fixed, but it's probably going to come back and happen again. I just call them whenever that happens, because I don't want them to suffer, and I don't want those genetics, being passed on and have those issues with the young as well. So the only things I know, treat it like you would any other wound. Put, like you said, you can put some Preparation H on it. If you can give her some kind of softer bedding, maybe a box with straw in it or something like that for her to get in, that might help relieve it a little bit. But I'd be surprised if you get it cured completely and it doesn't come back. And if I'm mistaken, if I'm not reading that right, correct me, but I think that's what you were talking about. So 340 Quail Farm has a question. It says, with the elevated summer temps, are you doing anything different for your birds or eggs? We just had that question, actually. We spent quite a bit talking about it. Lots of people saying that they're putting out frozen water bottles for their birds, putting fans out for to get some airflow moving through the hutches and stuff like that. Me personally, I put my quail hutch where it's under the shade of a tree, so it never gets direct sunlight. The sunlight never hits it directly. And just make sure they have plenty of water. Try not to pester them during the heat of the day. Let them, do my chores early morning or late evening when it's a little bit cooler. I don't want to get them all worked up during the heat of the day, and that's it. They deal with it. They seem to do okay. Andy says, how many quail do you generally keep on hand? It varies significantly. I usually keep a set of breeders somewhere around 15 or so breeder hens. So I'm getting around a dozen eggs a day or a little bit over. And so that would be like 15 hens and let's see, 4 roosters usually, because I throw one extra in just in case something happens to one of them. So that would be 19 birds roughly, 19 to 20, somewhere right around in there is what I usually keep as my breeders. But right now I have my breeders, and then I also have my last hatch that's getting close to age right now, which is 45-ish, I think, in there. I don't remember exactly. 40-ish birds in there. Verna says to Tim that it would depend on whether your birds are inside or outside or inside. I'm guessing they're outside, or you wouldn't be worried too much about the heat, right? I'm guessing. But anyway, we'll find out. Best Gamer says, well, chicks out of the 9 jumbo white quail that I hatched out, only 1 roo, and I saw today that the roo was aggressive. One girl has a bloody eye. Looks like she will. You'd be kind of surprised, honestly. They do tend to kind of heal up from a lot of those injuries, and it's a little bit, I had the same kinds of issues. That's why I got away from the white birds. I had nothing but aggression problems with them, but it's really hard to fix that, because if you remove the hen, then you're going to have a really hard time putting her back in. As soon as you put her back in, she's going to get beat up all over again. You almost kind of have to let it play out and hope for the best. And, the roosters do tend to kind of calm down a little bit as they get, a little bit more mature. So hopefully that will happen and she'll heal up. I've had that happen with birds where they got an eye that looked like they were going to lose it, and it just healed up just fine, no problems. And I've even had them where they did lose an eye, but they were still fine. It didn't really cause any, they still got around. They still ate eggs. It wasn't a big deal. And then they calmed down after that. But I had problems with aggression with white birds. That's why I got rid of them and eventually went with nothing but jumbo pharaoh. But I'm not telling you to necessarily do that. I'm just saying, like I said, moving them out, your first instinct is probably, we'll move her out and put her in a safe space, let her heal. But then you're never going to be able to move her back in without having those same problems. Because when you move adult quail in with an existing group of quail, they're going to get picked on and beat up, and not just by the rooster, probably the hens as well. So you'll probably end up having the same issue. Again, what I would typically do is just leave her in there, play out, see how she does. Watch her. If it keeps getting worse, then you may have to move her out or call her because of the injuries. But that's what I do. Let's see. David Lister said, yeah, sore hocks. So, yeah, okay. Well, hopefully, I know that's not fun, but I had to call one of my favorite does because sore hocks. And That's just how I deal with it. Jalopy guy says, Chris, what are your selection qualities for quail for meat breeders? Just size. I just pick the biggest ones, and I don't weigh them. I just look at them and say, okay, that's a pretty good size hen. And I try to pick the biggest ones, and those are my breeders. That's it. That's all I do. I don't make it super complicated. It works out pretty well for me. Best Gamer says, also, should I just collect all the eggs for 7 days and hatch them, even though I have one roux to 8 girls, and some girls are very big for 8 weeks? Yeah, I mean, that's about all you can do, really. You've got one rooster. Now, unless you wanted to, like, cut that number down, because with 8 birds and one rooster, yeah, your fertility is probably going to be a little bit low, but you don't really have a choice. I mean, that's what you got. So your options are either to do that, save all your eggs for about a week, and then put them in the incubator and see what hatches, and you'll go from there. Or call a couple of your birds, so you're down to like 5 hens and 1 rooster, and that will bump your fertility up. But that also drops the number of eggs you're getting, so you should end up about the same in the end. So that's what I would do. I would just save up your eggs for a week, put them in the incubator, see what you get. You may not get the best hatch rate, but you're getting probably your best opportunity for the best hatch rate that way, if that makes sense. Katrina says to 340 there. Yeah, most of those suggestions for keeping your quail in the summertime, people putting frozen water bottles in there. Somebody said a dish with some water in it for them to kind of wade in, put some ice cubes in it occasionally, frozen pieces of watermelon and vegetables and things like that for them to snack on. I don't do any of those things. Like I said, I just keep them in the shade and let them deal with it, and try not to pester them during the heat of the day. Basically, make sure they always have water. That's it. And they do fine. I don't lose any birds really in the heat. Shane says, hello, Chris and viewers. Just stopping in to say hello. I'll watch later. Everyone have a great night. Well, thanks for stopping by. You have a great night as well. Hey, there's Jupiter. Haven't seen you in a while. Says, hey, Chris, hope you're doing well. I am. Hopefully you are too. Says, any ideas on how many years a quail rooster can keep fertilizing eggs? I mean, it's hard to say. Some sources will say like after about a year, they start really dropping off, but I've had pretty good fertility for up to 2 years. I don't think I've ever tried to keep them any longer than that. I know Andy Rabbit was saying that she had some birds that were 2 or 3 years old, I want to say, and got good hatch rates out of them. But I can't guarantee that. You have to talk to her to verify that again. So I would say, somewhere around 2 years is probably about as long as I have ever tried to keep them, and still gotten pretty decent fertility. David says, suggestions on excess chicken and quail eggs. You can give them to your church family or your local food bank or similar agency. There you go. That's a good idea too. Desert Homestead says, my post disappeared 3 times now. This is a test. So are you trying to put in like a link to something, because it won't allow you to post links? Or I think that's about the only thing it would cut out, is if you had if you were trying to post a website link or a link to a video or something like that. That's the only thing I could think of. Sorry, got a comment. Got a message. I want to make sure it wasn't important. It's not. I can deal with it here after a while. So yeah, if you're trying to post a link to something, it's not going to let you post that. That's the only thing I can think of. If it's not that, I'm not sure. Try to say it another way. See if I don't know. I can't imagine it would be filtering anything out other than links. I don't know. Maureen says, I'm late. I was tickling the birds. Ticking. I think it's tucking is what it means. Tucking the birds away for the night. It's all good. We don't keep attendance here. You're welcome to show up late if you want to. Best Gamer says, Chris, thanks, buddy. Good seeing you tonight. Got to watch a little Netflix with the wife, then get to bed. See you next week. Sounds good, man. Have a good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate that. Deb Olson says, any advice regarding using ivermectin on quail? I'm currently researching, but would love to hear any thoughts on this topic. Okay, so I'm not sure first of all, why are you using ivermectin? Is there a reason? I have never used it on my birds. I've never found it necessary to use on them. If these are birds you plan on eating, then I don't think I would use ivermectin on them. There's a certain amount of time where you need to let that, pass before you would eat them, and I just don't like the idea of doing that. And I wouldn't eat the eggs either while they're on ivermectin, but that's just me, and we'll see if somebody else can kind of comment in on that. But my question really is curious, like, why are you thinking about, what purpose is it serving for you? What do you plan on using it for? Bill Cox says, Chris, when you wean your kits and separate them into your male or female cages, how long do you leave them in the cages? Until they're ready to process, till they're roughly 5 pounds, roughly. And sometimes that's, a couple of weeks. Sometimes that's a month. It just depends. Like my silver foxes grow out a little bit slower, so it usually takes them close to 12 weeks to grow out. And I'm usually, separating them at about 6 to 8 weeks, somewhere right around in there, usually 6 weeks. I go ahead and wean them off and move them into the grow out pens. So, that's looking at another 4 to 6 weeks roughly after they, get in there to where they're in the grow out pens. Sin says, my red ranger chicks sure don't look like red rangers. They're blonde birds with brown and black wing feathers. Thoughts? Well, I'm not an expert on chickens. I've never raised red ranger chicks, but I don't know. Do they? Let's see if I can find a picture of red ranger chicks. Do they normally look that way? Yeah, they're normally a little blondish, maybe kind of a blondish on the orange side. So I don't know. They're blonde birds with brown and black wing feathers. And that doesn't seem to match up to the pictures, brown and black wing feathers. But maybe, chances are they're probably growing in their wing feathers, and they do have kind of brownish to black wing feathers when they're adults. So I don't know how old they are, but if they're starting to feather out, usually a lot of times their wing feathers are the first things that come in. So that may be seen why you're seeing the brown and black wing feathers. I'm not really sure. I've never raised red ranger chicks from a chick. I've never raised them at all. So I don't really know that I can speak to that. Andy Rabbit says, yep, I had one set that was 3 years old, and I just hatched from some that was hatched in December of 2022. Out of 20 eggs each from 3 different hens, I got an average of 17 from each set. So that's pretty good. That's a great hatch rate, actually. So you go, 3 years, 3-year-old birds, almost 3 years, 2.5 or something like that. And 2.5 years roughly, and still getting great hatch rates out of them. So there you go. Desert Homestead says, no links. I don't know what's happening. You might try to reword it some way, or I'm sorry you're having that issue. I don't know what to tell you exactly. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know why your comments are disappearing. You're not cussing at us or something, are you? I don't think it would filter that out, but you never know. Maybe they updated something and now it's filtering out inappropriate language. I don't know. I doubt you would be cussing at us anyway, but Katrina says, anytime you're dealing with medication, you need to be very cautious with dosage due to size. Think of a horse-sized pill, then think about a horse compared to a quail. Would skip it personally. I kind of agree. I don't know that it's a good idea to use ivermectin if you're going to. I couldn't tell you the dosage. It's going to be a very minute amount, though. Scrap 5000 says to David Lister, talking about extra eggs, right? Says you can make fresh pasta or dehydrate them at 145 degrees, powder them with a blender, and store them in a jar. It's a thought, too. Desert Homestead says try 4. Try 4. Okay, there we go. This is try 4 on posting your comment. It looks like I posted. In Phoenix, I give all animals redundant water sources just in case one stops working. I keep reminding my wife wild birds don't get fans or frozen anything. There you go. That's good advice. That's pretty much kind of the way I look at it too. I just let it make sure they have water, make sure they're in the shade. Don't pester them during the heat of the day. That's pretty much it. Don says, for lockdown, does anyone raise the floor temperature when locking down to be equal to 99.5? Just heard of that a few months ago. I do not change my incubator temperature at all during lockdown. I just leave it the same as what it was, set at the beginning. It's kind of interesting. I mean, it may not be a bad idea. It just seems like that might be a little bit tricky to do, but I don't know. Desert Homestead says, I tried the 3-letter word for frozen water. Maybe that word is flagged. Is there there's a 3-letter word for frozen water? Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know what the 3-letter word is. I'm trying to think of what the, ice. Oh, I get it now. I get what you're saying. Maybe. That seems like a weird word to flag, though, doesn't it? I mean, I get why they may, because of all the stuff going on in the news today and how sensitive everybody is about that kind of stuff. Maybe it saw that as a hateful word and flagged it for some reason. Interesting. But somebody else said ice earlier, said ice cubes, right? Put ice cubes in something and it worked. I don't know. Maybe the AI is just a little bit off. Marine said, let's see, I've ate quail eggs after treated with ivermectin. My first time ever treating a chicken, and I got the ivermectin all over my hands. A while later, my chronic fatigue that I've had for years is gone. Yeah, I mean, I'm doing it at your own risk. I'm not going to suggest you do. But, I know that I'm not going to say much more about that because I don't really know. But yeah, I know it's for parasites. Scrap 5000 says, Chris, do you have all comments turned on? I do. I have all comments turned on. And it wasn't a matter of me not seeing it. It was the comment when she was posting was actually disappearing. It wouldn't post. So I don't know. Deb says, ivermectin is for parasites. A chicken friend was a bit insistent, but I am hesitant and wonder if there was really a need. There shouldn't be a need. Unless you have a parasite problem, there's really no need. And if you're keeping your quail in a cage and not on the ground, chances of them getting really any kind of major parasite issue are probably slim to none. And I'd be surprised if their chickens even have any parasite problems. I'm one of those where I would rather treat the problem than do a whole bunch of prevention and add in all these extra drugs and all that kind of stuff. I don't like the idea of doing that unless I need to. I've never noticed any kind of parasites in any of my quail. I wouldn't worry about it unless you start running into some issues. You find worms in them or something like that, then, maybe. But other than that, I wouldn't worry about it. Don says, extra eggs get eaten up making quiche, which you can then freeze. There you go. Scrap 5000 says to Marine Veal, your name is making me hungry. Rabbit Homesteading says ice. Scrap 5000 says ice is doing God's work. So it must not be that word. I don't know if that's it or not. Don says, that was me. I put ice cubes in their wading pools. Yep, I knew, yeah. Rabbit Homesteading says, ice works for me. Hey, Chris, good to see you. Good to see you, too. Thanks for joining. Andy Rabbit says, I'll try. I don't ice. There you go. So, yeah, it must not be that word. I don't know. I don't know what's causing it. Maybe it was a combination. I don't know. Katrina says, feed them garlic or pumpkin seeds. Verify pumpkin is okay. For parasites, garlic is good antibiotic and antiviral. I know garlic can be toxic to some animals. Is it good for quail? I got to look that up real quick. I'm not sure. Okay, AI Google search says, yes, garlic is toxic to quail and should be avoided. It can cause anemia due to the breakdown of blood cells, leading to various health problems. Yeah, I know garlic's kind of a no-no for a lot of animals, so I don't know. I mean, good, not a terrible suggestion. They do fine on it, but I would avoid that too. In fact, I wouldn't even worry about it. Again, unless you have any kind of issues with, like, you're having issues with parasites, I just wouldn't worry about it. But I know, yeah, pumpkin seed's a natural dewormer. So, I mean, it can help with that. Pumpkin seed oil is a great treatment even for this is Katrina. It says, verify quail are allowed to eat pumpkin, but yes, pumpkin seed oil is a great treatment even for furry animals. Yeah, I feed my dog pumpkin occasionally. That's good. I'm sure that it would be fine for quail. Let me look it up real quick. We'll find out. I don't see why it wouldn't be. No, pumpkin's fine. You can feed pumpkin to your quail. Don says, oil of oregano is also for parasites. I did that for my dog too. Really? Let's find out if that's good for him. I want to make sure. I have not heard of using that, actually. Let's see. Generally appears to be safe and potentially beneficial as long as it's used in appropriate concentrations. It has antioxidant properties, immune support, gut health, improved performance. So yeah, it looks like it's fine. You probably don't want to go too much. 300 milligrams per kilogram can cause side effects, including ocular or fatty degeneration of the liver and decreased intestinal wall thickness. You have to look at that. That's a pretty high dose. 300 milligrams per kilogram of body weight is that's saying that would be a really high dose and that could cause damage. But as long as you stay below that, then it'd be okay. I've never heard of using it for parasites. Interesting. Desert Homestead says, well, now I'm confused. Oh, well. Yeah, don't stress about it. I don't do any kind of preventative parasite stuff, and I don't have any issues with parasites, never have. Like I said, if they're not in contact with the ground, their chances of getting parasites are probably pretty low. Even if they are in contact with the ground, I mean, it makes it a higher chance, but that doesn't necessarily mean they'll have them. Let's see, where are we at here? Andy says, I think it'd be really hard for a rabbit in a cage to get worms. They don't come in contact with the ground. Yeah, I agree. We were talking about quail, actually, and ivermectin is what started all that. I don't think there's any need to give them any of that stuff. I would avoid it unless you start having some kind of problem. Desert Homestead says, maybe my phone is overheating and not sending 117 degrees today. Well, that could be it. Maybe. But we'll just chalk it up to that, I guess. Andy Rabbit says, I've never seen worms in any of my rabbits. I haven't either. No issues with any kind of parasites in any of my rabbits or my quail. Katrina says, funny, my Google AI said garlic was fine in moderation. Well, I did a search and said, is garlic toxic to quail? And let's see. And the garlic AI says, now there's a post on Backyard Chickens that says, secondly, yes, quail can eat garlic, but there's not enough evidence in my experience to determine if it prevents illness. But the Google AI says, yes, garlic is toxic to quail. And I know it's one of those things, I think that in very small amounts, it could be good. That's kind of how it is with dogs. There's a lot of information out there that really says that it's toxic to dogs, but really that's only in higher amounts. If you give them small amounts, it can be good. But why even bother? I just wouldn't with it. Rabbit Homesteading says diatomaceous earth, aka DE, fossilized diatoms that will help with worms. I've heard that, but I don't know that there's really any good evidence. I mean, theoretically, yes, it should help, but the thought is that once they eat it, it's going to get wet, and diatomaceous earth really isn't effective when it's wet. It really needs to be dry. Plus, you can also the dust can be kind of hazardous. So I would avoid using diatomaceous earth personally. If you want to use it, I mean, go ahead. I know lots of people do. It works for a lot of different kinds of pest control, but I would avoid using it around my birds because I think it can lead to some respiratory issues with them too from the dust. Rabbit Homestead says, but like Chris said, don't worry unless you have really skinny birds, rabbits, or whatever. Yeah, unless you start having some problems, I wouldn't worry about it. Andy Rabbit says, Chris, I'm going to ask you a question. I know you have been asked 1,000 times. It's okay. I don't mind. It says, but when you feed max quail, do you grind them? Do you do feathers, inners, bones, feet, and heads? Okay, I've done both, actually. Yes, I do grind them. I've ground them up whole before, and he didn't really like that much. I had to mix it in with other stuff. So now, and it's kind of gross, honestly. It doesn't smell the best. It's not pleasant. So now, what I do is I skin them. Don't usually use, you can definitely use the heads, but I take pretty much everything out of the inside except for like the liver and the kidneys and the heart. I leave those in there and grind it all up. Now, if your dog will eat them whole, just feed them to him that way. That's easier. My dog won't. He won't eat them unless they're all ground up. He won't eat them whole for some reason. I mean, he probably would if I cut them in chunks and he didn't recognize it as an animal. I guess. I don't know. He will just destroy any kind of small animal, squirrels, rabbits. If he can catch them, they're dead. I mean, just immediately. But a quail, he doesn't do that with. He'll pin them down, and I can usually get them away from them before they end up doing any kind of damage. He doesn't just destroy them like he does other small animals. But once they're dead, he doesn't want anything to do with them. He just doesn't care. So unless I grind it up, he doesn't really want to eat. Desert Homestead says, my chicken feed comes with oregano and cinnamon added. They advertise it on the front of the bag. Interesting. I guess those are fine to add. I don't see any reason why not. I never thought about adding. I've got plenty of oregano. I've got it growing. And if you've ever grown oregano, it takes over if you don't keep track of it. So I never thought about taking that, feeding it to the quail. Katrina says, if feeding different foods, have in separate dish so they can regulate how much they eat. Very rarely overdose because they don't like feeling sick. Well, that's not a bad thought too. But if you're doing something like oregano oil or something like that, that's a little bit different because, I mean, you're not just going to put a bowl of oregano oil out there and let them drink out of it as much as they want. But Bob says, with the garlic, wait until a few days before you're going to process. Get a head start on the seasoning your dinner. Yeah, I don't know if that would work or not, but that's a good idea, isn't it? Feed them a bunch of garlic before you process. Andy Rabbit says, yeah, Katrina, when I have a kidney infection, I can drink apple cranberry juice, but the minute I start feeling better, I can't stand it. Huh. I've never had a kidney infection, so I can't speak to that, but that makes sense. I mean, your body's going to crave what you need to kind of cure it, so to speak. Andy Rabbit says, because he knows they are yours. Maybe that's it. But he will even, like, squirrel. If he catches a squirrel, it's dead. He's just done with it. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it after that. He's just, it's not interesting to me anymore. But if I skin it and grind it up and put it, I mean, he just loves it. He goes crazy for it. Andy says, do you ever feed rabbit to Max? If so, how do you do rabbits for him? Pretty much the same thing. I do skin them. I give him rabbit ears. I'll dehydrate rabbit ears and give them to him. I dehydrate them so they save a little bit longer. They're like little potato chips kind of things for him, little crunchy things. He loves them. But the rest of it I skin out, keep the liver, the heart, the kidneys. The rest of the innards get thrown out, and I grind it up and mix it in with his food. Farmer Marshall says, I have to keep my dogs away from my quail. They will snatch a wild bird real quick. Yeah, it's the most interesting thing with my dog. He's a pointer pit bull mix. So he's got some bird dog in him. And I don't know. I mean, he's super interested in the birds. If one gets out, he's on it. I mean, immediately, boom, on it. But he doesn't pick them up and shake them like he does other animals. He just pins it down. And if I leave him there long enough, it'll die because it'll get stressed out and die. But other than that, I can just go over and he listens to me real well. So I say, leave it. He backs off of it. And I just pick it up. And it's fine. As long as I get to it within a couple of minutes, it's okay. Katrina says, oil in water. I add it to my new chick water in very small amounts. Yeah, there you go. I mean, that'd be the way to do it. If you're going to add it to the water, small amounts. I don't do any of that. You can. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but it makes it a whole lot easier when you don't have to worry about it. But if you want to go through the extra effort, go ahead and do it. I also don't do any kind of like apple cider vinegar or anything like that. There was a big craze about apple cider vinegar several years ago where people were preaching how it's almost magical stuff that they were claiming that apple cider vinegar could do. Not magical. It is good for them if you get true apple cider vinegar with the mother in it. It's got the lactobacillus bacteria in it, which is the same stuff that's in like yogurt and kefir and those kinds of fermented foods that are good for you, good for your gut biome, whatever it's called. But there's that gnat again. I missed him earlier, apparently. But anyhow, it's not magical. It's not going to cure diseases. It's not going to make them, Anyway, you can add a little bit of apple cider vinegar to the water if you want to. I don't think it really makes much of an impact, so I don't bother with it. Desert Homestead says, DE has way different effects when eaten. The dry application dries out and cuts the bugs. It comes in food grade. Not sure of all the benefits. Laxative, I think. Maybe. Yeah, I know there's a food grade and it's pretty common. It's been fed to animals before. It's not necessarily the eating it that's going to bother them. It's when it's in its dry form, the dust that forms off of that can cause respiratory issues. That doesn't mean you necessarily shouldn't feed it to them. I'm just saying I avoid it. I just don't see any reason to. Bill says it's probably just prey dog drive for your dog. When it's over, then they aren't, and when they aren't moving. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. I agree. That's probably exactly what it is. I don't know why he doesn't do that with the birds, but he doesn't. But either way, once it's done, he doesn't care to eat it. Andy Rabbit says, I'm going to start my puppy on full homemade or raw, whatever it's called, diet. He has been on chicken and rice diet right now because he got sick. So I'm going to stay with it. So yeah, there's nothing. I mean, yeah, you can definitely do it. It's look up, there's dog food calculator. It's free. You can look it up and it put in, like an 80-20-20. So 80% lean meat, 20% organ, and 10% of that organ should be liver. The other 10% another secreting organ. So that would be like kidneys or brain or I think that's about it. Heart is actually considered a muscle meat, like a lean meat, not an organ. So kidneys is one of those. 10% should be that. 10% should be another organ meat. This is all by weight. And then another 10% bone. And usually I use chicken for that because it goes through my grinder and grinds up pretty easily. You want to avoid really hard bones like beef leg bones and things like that. They can tear their teeth up trying to chew on those. Anyway, look it up. You can find a bunch of information. Katrina says, Andy, do a lot of research on the raw diet. Just rabbit is bad for dogs. Meat is too lean. Guessing quail is too lean too. Yeah, if you just feed just straight rabbit, yeah, that's not really that good. But mix it in with other things. Usually, I mean, you can do all kinds of different mixes. A lot of times when we get hamburger really cheap, that makes up. Sometimes it'll go on sale for like $2.99 a pound at a local butcher shop. So that'll make up the lean muscle meat portion of it. I try to mix it in and out. So we'll get pork loin sometimes because that's a little bit cheaper. You don't want super fatty meats. You do want leaner meats, but you're right. You don't want to feed him just rabbit. You need to mix in. He needs bone. And rabbit bones will go through the grinder too. So you can use those for your 10% bone. Anyway, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. Research it. You'll figure it out. Says Andy Rabbit says, I got to get a hatch. I got to hatch a lot for him. LOL. There you go. Rabbit Homesteading says, Katrina, if you add the organs, rabbit starvation is hard to get for sure. Yeah, rabbit starvation is kind of one of those things. If you were feeding nothing but rabbit, yeah, that would be a little bit of an issue. If you add in the organs and other things, mix in some other meats with it and stuff like that, it's not going to be an issue. Basically, rabbit starvation is because there's too much protein in it and not enough fat. Dogs don't have the same fat requirements we do anyway. Their fat requirements are actually pretty minimal, but it's not something you should really stress about. Just mix in some other stuff with it and you'll be okay. Dawn says, question, UPS is bringing my eggs tomorrow in a hot truck as all packages are. Would you set them in a warmed up incubator egg turner for 24 hours before turning on the egg turner? No, what I would do is set them on the counter beside the incubator and let them set for overnight or 24 hours if you want. Night's probably plenty. Let them settle, put them in the incubator and start incubating. That's the way I would do it. Andy Rabbit says he will get different meat, but I can raise rabbits and quail for him. Yeah, you can definitely mix that in with what he's getting. Don says to Andy Rabbit, you need a lot of quail if you want eggs too. My little guy ate a dozen eggs a week. He got sardines in place of rancid fish oil. Yeah, we do feed sardines occasionally, but Don says, Chris, wouldn't they already be incubating in the truck? Probably not. I mean, maybe a little bit, but they're not going to be in the truck for days on end. So I doubt that it's really going to make big of a difference with it. That's the way I would do it. I mean, if you feel like you want to just put them right in the incubator and wait a day before you turn the turner on, do it that way and see what happens. It would probably work just fine. But the way I always let eggs rest when they're shipped to me, overnight, and then I put them in the incubator and just incubate away. I don't really stress about it too much. And I usually get pretty decent hatch rates. So anyway, back to I give my dog sardines occasionally too. He gets, about 4 eggs a day, usually. Quail eggs, not full-size eggs, but quail eggs. I don't feed him fish oil. I got to looking it up actually, and eggs contain quite a bit of the omega-3s. That's why you would feed sardines as omega-3s. Also do give him supplements. We give him a vitamin E supplement. He gets a drop of vitamin E oil a day and a kale supplement for iodine. And that's one of the things you probably do need to do is iodine, some kind of iodine supplement, because that's hard to come by unless you're feeding whole prey. So he gets, we get these little pills, kelp pills that have iodine in them. Of course, that's a naturally occurring thing. And I just break one of those open and sprinkle it over his food every day. Katrina says, awesome. Just one of those things I had heard and wanted to make sure into research was given. Now I can get I can get carried away with ideas, not knowing the damage it can do. Yeah, I would avoid, just unless you have problems, don't worry about it. Avoid all that stuff. Just feed them straight, chick feed. You can add in some other things if you want to, a little bit of pumpkin here and there. Even if you want to go so far as to add oregano in and all, that's okay too. But you don't necessarily have to. Andy Rabbit says, I don't mind having a little extra quail. Sometimes I'm told I have too many already, LOL. Yeah. Andy Rabbit says, it's okay, Katrina M. It's good to make things aware. Yep, absolutely. I think we can all get carried away with stuff. I mean, especially when you first start on something, whether, I don't know if you're just first starting or not. I'm assuming, but I don't know. But I'm that way. When I get first, I think everybody is. When you first start doing something, you just kind of research it. And a lot of those people online, I think, are just trying to sound smarter than they are. So they start, bringing up things that, nobody's ever talked about. Adding oregano to your, and I'm not saying oregano is bad, but I'm just using that as an example. So, let me talk about it. Let me draw some attention to me. And then they try to go through this big long list of all the benefits that this whatever thing can add, can do, what it can use to be treated with, blah, 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 blah. And if you don't know any better and you read that, you think, oh my gosh, I need to be treating my quail with that. But no, you don't. It's okay. There's a reason nobody talks about it. Dawn says, I give mine sardine pieces as a treat and made the liver into dehydrated treats, but use them in portions in his diet. Yep, that works out well too. I just grind it in with the mix, so it's probably a little bit easier. We have a local store here called Food for Less. If you're in the Southwest Missouri area, it's kind of you may be familiar with them. But anyway, they sell pig brain, so I can get pork brains there, and that makes the other 10% of my 20% organ meat. It's hard to come across other things like kidneys and kidneys, or there's a couple other things. It's hard to come across those. Life Done Cheap with Lee says, any suggestions on natural ways to control the smell of the rabbit manure? Barn lime good. P.S. They're outside, but with warmer weather, it's starting to smell. If you can keep it dry, that's really the big difference. Right now, everything's wet because of all the rain and getting in. Yeah, I've got a little bit of a smell too. I've never used barn lime, but I've heard that it does work pretty well. Oh, excuse me. Or just use like a deep litter method where you cover it up with, straw or something like that. Pretty good. Let it start composting, and that'll help. Those are the, scoop it up regularly, throw it in a compost pile, mix it in with plenty of carbon. That'll take care of the smell too. But really, the idea is if you can keep it dry, it's not too bad. It's when it gets wet that it really smells bad. I don't know if that was any good suggestions for you, but that's kind of what I do. I just deal with it, and then, when it dries out, it usually is okay. Desert Homestead says the difference between pets and livestock is real. Absolutely, it is. Life Done Cheap with Lee says, my New Zealand is due tomorrow with her first litter. How are New Zealand's with first litters? Well, just like any other rabbit, sometimes first litters go great and sometimes they don't. So, I mean, who knows, man? Good luck. That's all I can say. I've had rabbits where their first litter was fine, no problems whatsoever. But most of the time, the first litters are a little sketchy. Like they may not have them in the nest box. Usually, if you can keep the babies alive for a day, usually you're okay at that point. But it's just that initial first day. They don't really quite know what to do yet. They may lay them on the cage floor. And if that's the case, you need to get them scooped up, put in the litter box pretty quick. You're just going to have to watch her fairly close. Bill Cox says, when feeding raw, don't forget they need bone also. Yeah, absolutely they do. And again, you don't really want to go with you don't want to go with beef leg bones, any kind of, Chicken bones are pretty good. I grind them all up, but you could feed chicken bones. You can feed rabbit bones. Those are pretty good too. Those are all fairly light. Turkey bones are probably they're okay, but they're getting on the verge of being too dense, too hard for them. You want to stay away from most beef bones. Those are going to be too tough, too dense, and too hard for them to chew. They're very thick, heavy bone, if that makes sense. How are we doing? Oh my gosh, it's 8 o'clock already. So I got to wrap this up, guys. Let me get through one or more quick comments and then we'll be done. Let's see. Andy Rabbit says, my puppy got parvo. He had shots and was going to go to the vet Wednesday. Yesterday to get another shot and his rabies shot. Monday I had to take him in because he was sick. He started eating yesterday. Oh my gosh, I hope he's okay. Parvo is terrible, but hopefully you caught it in time. Katrina says, quail mouth is just as real, if not more, as chicken mouth. Absolutely it is. Andy Rabbit says, today is keeping his food and water down with our medication, so hopefully he is recovering. Hopefully he is. It sounds like he's on the mend. All right, guys, I got to wrap this one up. So thanks for joining tonight. Appreciate that. We should see you guys next week. Don't see any reason right now why I won't be here next week. And until then, God bless. We'll see you guys later. Take care.